Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Stepping Up by me, Kindler, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. Today we are doing chapter 43. You've been given a reprieve none of you deserves, Harry said in disgust. He stood on the 4 steps, which placed him slightly higher than the platform had the last time. Consider yourself lucky. It looked like saying the words angered him. The crowd of recruits didn't look impressed. A few even sneered. There had been 1-0 group to arrive in total. Everyone in them looking mean, studying their surroundings. It was expected at least one person to run, but they hadn't. They followed instruction with silent glares. You've already been assigned to your teams, don't bother bitching. No one here cares. The guard leader as he edged away from everyone, closer to the mountain. No matter how mean they looked, they were runners now, and other runners would care. They're going to be replaced as they die, and if I find out, and I will, you had something to do with that death, you're going to experience this dungeon alone, naked. He looked the crowd over and asked to smile for me. You don't know what that means. Please test me. You aren't even worth being dungeon food. Just wanted to speak with Stowe, and with everyone's attention on Harry, this was the perfect time. You might have been taken out of the catacombs you belong in, but this isn't freedom. Now, you're going to have to earn what you get by surviving the runs we'll be sending you on. Stowe? Tibs said, keeping his voice low despite the distance. He wasn't certain where the dungeon's influence started, or what started. Where you are? Where are you? Where's my cursor? There you go. Started once away from the steps or the stalls. The previous time he'd been right up against the stone, but now he thought he'd stand out too much there. Aye, Tibs? Stowe answered, sounding cautious. I have been more reasonable with the rooms. Tibs smiled. I know. You should hear how amazed the teams are when they return without losing anyone. I'm sorry. Tibbs couldn't finish it. It wasn't okay. It had been unfair. It had been unfair and vicious, and it still hurt. Took a breath. But it was done and over with, and now they had to move past it. Can you see any of the recruits? Some of them, the first few rows, Harry's really bright. I'd love for him to still feel sad. But didn't think on what he was about. On what that was about, and reminded himself that even if he was being more reasonable, Stowe was still about testing those who went inside. Of course, if Harry stepped in, it would be Stowe that was tested. These recruits are going to be tougher than the Omegas you're used to, I think. I'm not sensing any element from them. It's more because of their experience. They're older. Jekyll says they weren't caught for picking pockets or bigger stuff. Like what? Robbing houses? Jekyll had shaken his head when Tibs had asked the same question. And before he could press, they'd been at the field with Harry looking over everyone. It felt wrong to speak. What do you want me to do? Stowe asked before Tibs could figure out something to say. Tibs looked the crowd over. What should Stowe do? Was it even his place to dictate anything? It wasn't special, so it shouldn't be. But this was new for the dungeon, and for Tibs too. His trade had nasty people, but as far as he knew, none of them had ever caught a king's attention, though Jekyll implied those had. What crime did someone have to commit for a king to be involved? I trust your judgment, he finally said, unable to escape the feeling it was giving up. Yeah, giving up is not what I wanted here. I still can't think of what I actually was giving up. It's not giving up. I won't let you down, I promise. Tibs nodded and ran a finger along the bracer, looking for a way to ask what he wanted to. You're going to do the next run, right? Stowe asked, seeming fearful. I will. They're putting up the schedule tomorrow. They're putting the schedule up tomorrow. Look at the crowd again. Harry was talking about how the Omegas would go in the morning, and any Upsilon who got to put coins to go ahead of the other We just had to make sure the new Upsilon teams knew what that was about. So, he hesitated, then pushed ahead. Can I ask a favor? And the dungeon answered, this one was more cautious than before. I thought you didn't want me to treat you differently. I know, and I've been trying to come up with a way to do this without asking you, but I need to have an audience with light. I can't figure out how to make it happen out here. Harry would know, and he'd ask why. I can't lie to him. It's a thing light does. He calls it shining on lines, and you don't want him to know everything you can do. If I do, he's going to tell the guild, and even if I don't mind them knowing what I can do, I don't know how I could explain it without you coming up. Just avoiding mentioning you when you are involved a little would make Harry know something's off. I understand, still said neutrally. If you don't want to, would you need to add? I understand. I screamed at you for the way you treated me, and now the way you treated me, and now I'm here, asking you to treat me special again. I'm going to help you, Tibs. The tone warned. I can make a room and fill it with light. I don't know how to get the emotion part of it, though. I have that part handled. Thank you. If you need me to do something in return, just say it. If you have a way to bring me light essence, I'd appreciate it. This will use a lot of what I have right now, and no runners have had light, so I only know basic things to do with it. Tibs hesitated. You want me to get a runner to choose light so you can see what they do with it, Tibs. I swear, that's all. I can learn from watching them use their essence. That's how I did it before. Tibs had no idea how he can do that, or if he even should, but I'll see what I can do. Thank you. That's what friends do, right? Tibs sounded so uncertain. Tibs nodded. Stowe sounded so uncertain. Tibs nodded. Yeah, it is. He headed back to the crowd just as a man broke from it in his direction. He was fast for how much muscle he had, and dressed in ripped gray clothes that matched that of the group he'd been in. They was surprised he was the only one making a run for it in such an open space. Most of them had to think not every guard here could catch them if they all ran. Which thought about stopping the men at a distance. He could do a lot without anyone noticing. But Harry didn't want him involved in guard stuff, although he had asked Tibbs to stop. It was the expression on the man running toward him that made Tibbs step out of the way so the guards now in pursuit could do their job. Not that they were catching up yet. He wasn't looking in the distance at its potential escape. His eyes were fixed on Tibbs, and he changed direction as Tibbs moved. He was a day for Tibbs. Since he didn't have a choice, Tibbs flung water between him and the men, wetting the ground, then icing it. The ground was so trampled, it barely absorbed any of the water before it was ice. The man fell on his back the moment he had a foot on it, then slid 10 paces before he was able. One of these days I'll figure out why I keep flipping these. Able to get enough purchase to throw himself off and get back to his feet. Barely a dozen paces separating them. They're going to kill you if you keep running, Tibbs said, coating himself with a thin sheet of ice. He didn't want what he was doing to be obvious. Not with you protecting me. The smile was vicious. There was a time the confidence in the tone would have scared him, would have promised to beat him. That's not going to happen. He mixed some earth with the water, since he couldn't use too much right now. Adding the effect would help. Then, if they really want me, they're going to have to go through you. The men lunged for Tibbs. He stepped aside, but the man was even faster than Tibbs expected, twisting in midair and grabbing his arm, pulling him down with him. They were back on their feet, the man's arm around his neck before Tibbs could harden the water nerve. I need to check something. Yeah, okay. Now you're going to have to protect me with your magic. And growled in his ear. Stop! He yelled at the running guards. They were a mix of silver and black, along with green and black. If you don't, I'm going to break his neck. You're going to listen to you, Tibbs said, just as the guard came to a stop. The one in silver, the ones in silver looked at the ones in green. You know, magic, this means you're important. Not really. He hardened the water and earth around his neck as the man tightened his grip when two of the guards in silver stepped forward. I said not to move or he's going to die. The guards stopped again, but their expression said this was only a pause. They didn't know Tibs and didn't care. He'd be a casualty in them, of them doing what they needed. Tibs didn't intend to die, so he pushed corruption essence into the man's arm. Not the barbed version Dawn loved to use. He simply let it flow in and mix with the man's thin essence. Unlike what had happened with Tibs, or when he'd healed his friends while corruption tainted his essence, this didn't mix with it. He realized he didn't know how it had happened. He'd hoped to make the man sick, but that wouldn't happen. Would he suffocate him? He wondered as more guards approached, many of them in green. How many worked for Sebastian? Did they have order to hurt him so that would hurt Jackal? What? The man sounded surprised, and Tibs realized he was squeezing his neck harder. Enough, Tibs should be choking. Right, Tibs thought. He didn't have to rely on air to make someone choke. He found water at the back of the man's throat, and immediately he was coughing, letting go of Tibs. Two of the guards in silver rushed to grab the man. Thanks, Lightfinger, one of them said. It's not my name, Tibs snapped and stared. The guard had only arrived with the recruits no more than what, an hour ago? And he already knew him by Bardic's nickname? Was there anyone in the world who didn't know of it? Who didn't know of it now? What's going to happen to him? If I had my way, the guard said, straightening the man now that he could breathe, I'd hang him. But my orders are to make sure none of them run, so I'm going to throw him back with the rest, and you people can deal with them. Just grabbed the recruit's arm before they let him away. You're giving a chance at life. Appreciate that. He paused as the man looked at him with suspicion. My name is Tibs. Maybe everyone knew his nickname now, but maybe he could get one person to call him by his name. If you need help, start figuring things out. The inn is where you'll find me. The suspicions turned to confusion, and when Tibs let go of the guard, and when Tibs let go, the suspicion turned to confusion, and when Tibs let go, the guards dragged him away as he kept looking at Tibs over his shoulder. This isn't good, Rena said, tapping his name on the schedule. She hadn't even asked Tibs to find it. What was the problem? It was 9 days. It's plenty of time for Tibs to get ready. With how many recruits there were, the schedule had been altered more. Now, only three teams went in the afternoon. It made the schedule a month long. The first 7 days only had noble teams. That puts our run on the 6th of Marmel. Sure, replied. Tibs frowned, trying to remember why the month was important. Yes, Condor said, that will make things difficult. The 8th. The Dark Knight was on the 8th. I don't see how that's a problem. There's going to have both. Jackal stopped and looked around. The crowd was much thinner than usual on the first day of the schedule. Fewer teams meant not as much need for rushing here. How about we go back to our rooms so we don't need to worry? Rena said. Jackal dropped onto his bed. What's the problem with the run? It's not the run, Rena said, taking a chair from the table. It's how close the two audiences will be. I should have thought about that. This is one time we should have paid it to be earlier. I do not expect we could outbid the noble teams, Miller said. Therefore, the concern would have remained. You two are agreeing, as said, so this has to be serious, but I don't get it either. And with them, Tibs said, trying to understand how he ended up with 3 coffers. Well, when he somehow picked pockets for them. None of the street had on the way were crowded. I'll just continue to not eat until the second audience. It's not that simple, Rena said. I haven't found any books talking about what happens if you go too long without eating, other than dying, but you have to be really close to death after 9 days. You can't go 2 more days after that. So Tibs starts so Tibs starts, so he's at 7 when we do the run. Pickle said and smiled proudly. That still puts him at 9 days when he has his audience with darkness, she replied, exasperated. It's too dangerous. You can do light after you've done darkness. Tibbs pocketed the coins. Rather not. Stowe's going to graduate. He ran ahead over a bracer. Maybe soon. He sounded like he had more powerful stuff already for me. He sounded like he had more powerful stuff ready for me. Since I'm not taking them, we can use that to finish the floor. I want to use that time to get to the purity dungeon and get my audience there. You can have your audience with light after that, she said. But it's going to take time for Stowe to rebuild his reserve after he graduates. It's better if I do it now, then darkness, and then I can travel while it's closed. Can Tibs live off his essence? Nez asked. Oh, I hope not, Tibs said, realizing the implications. Why do you think that? Nez asked. He can heal himself, Archie said. Isn't hunger just being damaged because of lack of food? And why do you hope that you can't do it, Tibs? That would be great. I have to be afraid I'll die for this to work. If my essence can save me, there's no way I'll get the audiences. I do not know how hunger injures the body, Udor said, but Tibs has already gone hungry while having his essence. If he could stave it off, would it not have done so while he practiced going hungry? Look, that's all irrelevant. You can't do this. Now, not like this. Not like this, Serena stated. I have to, Tibs said. With Sebastian here, I have to get whatever it is I'll get with those 4 elements. Maybe I'll get yet another one, but you heard Jackal. Sebastian is already causing trouble here. I need to have everything I can to stop him, especially since I can't fucking learn how to do the things you're all able to do already. He hated the mindset thing. You could see how they use their essence, so he should just be able to copy it. But his versions never looked the same, and while they sometimes did something similar, most of the time they just broke apart. To die, Tibs, she said softly. I can die anytime I go on a run. Tibs like that. Stop! Jackal ordered as Kirina stood with an angry look on her face. This is what we're going to do. Tibs gets ready for the audience with light. Then we clear the dungeon, beat the boss, and get the loot. Lifted the others and continued when no one commented. Then you and Kamdar watch him until the dark night. If both of you agree it's too dangerous for him to risk it, we feed him and figure out when the next one's going to be, or we ask the dungeon for help again. I'd rather not ask Stowe for another favor, he said. And I'd rather you don't have to do any of this, Jackal replied. This, at least, is an alternative to you just dying in the attempt. Are you two okay with it? He asked Karina and Kamdar. It is a valid alternative, the cleric said. Karina sighed unhappily. Yes, it is. Still don't like the way we're putting Tibs at risk. Risk is an adventurer's life, Miss said, sounding as if he was quoting someone. And with risk comes reward, Jekyll added, grinning. Yeah, reward. She saw that no one was enthusiastic about that as he did. And this concludes chapter 43 of Stepping Up. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to read the story, it's up on Royal Road for free. If you want to support me as well as read ahead of the story, you can do so ahead of Royal Road. You can do so on my Patreon and have access to just about everything. If you want to listen to me read these live, it's every Tuesday morning on Twitch, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. The rest of the week, I write. The links are in the note, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.